He is a legal expert with the Team 1200 in Ottawa, and we'll introduce him to our public here and an audience in Montreal. He's a partner over at Gowlings, which is a national law firm, and his blog has been picked up by Fox, NBC, Yahoo, TSN. He covered the Kovalchuk saga from day one. He mentioned that the National Hockey League would win, and that in turn the National Hockey League would threaten to challenge previously approved contracts like the Hossa deal, the Savard deal, the Luongo deals, and many others. Eric Macramala, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Good morning. I love that. Sounds like an endorsement from Dudley Moore.
How you doing, Eric?
I'm good. Thanks.
Very well, thank you. Look, we picked up the phone. We gave you a call this morning because we have another situation with the National Hockey League, which is Eric Belanger. But you know what? We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about the National Hockey League's penalty of $3 million to the New Jersey Devils, a third-round pick, and a first-round pick in any of the next 4 years for Ilya Kovalchuk. Can they do that?
Yeah, the NHL can impose that penalty. On my blog at sportslawblog.ca this past weekend, I was sort of talking about the likely type of penalty we would see in this case, right? Because under the CBA, the NHL has the authority to hand down a whole number of penalties, fine up to $5 million, forfeiture of draft picks, on and on and on. In this case, though, I was just thinking we'd only see a fine. The important thing under the CBA is that when a team gets fined in a case like this for if they're found guilty of a circumvention, that fine counts against the salary cap. Now, the Devils and the NHL, before the NHL handed down their penalty, they agreed whatever fine would be imposed wouldn't count against the cap. So that's huge, especially now in a salary cap world where you have to count every penny, right? So I kind of said, well, look, the Devils will probably get a fine between $1 and $3 million, and that's going to be it. Then they also had the forfeiture of draft picks, and that was a surprise. It was a surprise because in the arbitrator's decision, Richard Block, in his Kovalchuk decision, he went out of his way. He went out of his way to say the Devils didn't operate in bad faith. And that's important because at law, when you say that someone operated in bad faith, you generally get stiffer penalties. And so what Block concluded is he made a circumvention of finding on the basis that the effect of the contract was to circumvent the cap. And it wasn't the Devils' intention to circumvent the cap. They didn't do it in bad faith. So Block said no intention, no bad faith, just let's look at the effect of the contract. And so that's kind of a lighter type of pronouncement by Block, and that should have resulted in a penalty that wasn't as harsh as what the NHL laid down, and that's the forfeiture of 2 draft picks plus $1 million fine. So that was a surprise.
Well, one of the things we're hearing is that when Lou Lamoriello signed the contract with Ilya Kovalchuk, he advised the National Hockey League. They said, hold on a second here. Let's wait for approval. And he went out and had the press conference before the approval was actually given, and hence the National Hockey League coming down as strong as they did.
Yeah, I mean, that was bizarre. I mean, Lou Lamoriello is, I think as we all know, is a pretty bright guy. He was actually instrumental in the negotiation of the current CBA that's in place. So all this was kind of a surprise. But I will say this. The NHL had a problem with all these contracts, Hossa, Luongo, Savard, Pronger, because they had these throwaway years at the end, years that were worth nothing, and that the assumption was the player wouldn't play out his contract, they could buy him out. And the reason the teams added these throwaway years at the end, just to remind the listeners, was to drop the salary cap hit per year, right? Because the salary cap hit is not what a player makes that year, but it's the average value of the contract.
Correct. But, okay, so, from a legal, continue, please. Yeah.
No, okay. So I think with the Kovalchuk deal, the NHL was just drawing a line in the sand, and they were saying, look, we have to make an example of Kovalchuk. That's our best case scenario. Win-wise, let's go after him and send a message.
What I was trying to get at, from a legal point of view, the contract, I can understand the Luongo contract because it takes effect starting this year, right? But how about the Hossa contract? The Hossa contract, he had already 1 full year under his belt. Can they actually go back and give a penalty for that contract that they approved at the time? He played the entire season, the playoffs. They won the Stanley Cup. He was a contributor in the Blackhawks' success. Can they go back and fine them for a contract that's already 1 year into effect?
You're absolutely right in that it seems so bizarre and outlandish that the NHL can go back and unapprove a contract they approved a year before, and the player played on that contract. But if you want someone to thank, you thank Ted Saskin. And the reason is, when you look at the CBA, it says in no uncertain terms, the NHL can unapprove any contract it's approved at any time. So, to me, the question to ask, the right question to ask is it fair the NHL can do this? That's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, why on earth did Ted Saskin and the NHLPA agree to let the NHL do that kind of thing?
In conversation with sports legal analyst Eric Macramala, and you can check out his blog, which is sportslawblog.ca, for some information. You'll get it all there. I want to talk to you about Donald Fehr, because you're one of the guys that broke the story. You are the guy that broke the story that he was looking for overwhelming support before taking the job. Of course, his track record is fantastic. Is he the ideal guy for this job?
I think he is. And this is, again, we're speaking based upon his track record, which is 27 years of experience running MLB union, which has become the most powerful sports union on the planet. He did a fantastic job with that. I think the NHL or the NHL Players Association needs a guy like him because there are certain things that need to get fixed. For one, is what we just talked about. The CBA now lets the NHL challenge any contract at any time, even 5 years after the fact. So I think they need a strong voice to step in and to take control and look at the NHL and say, look, all bets are off. In 2012, when we renegotiate the CBA, we're going to want to fix a few things. And Fehr garners a lot of respect. And on top of that, I'll tell you one thing, Tony. When I spell check Fehr on my blog, the suggestion that comes up is fear. And that's it. So I'm telling you, I think the NHL might, maybe not fear him, but there's respect there. This guy means business. And for a long time, the NHLPA has been rudderless, with the Saskin and Goodnow. Goodnow did a terrific job, but then the transition to Saskin was a disaster. The transition to Kelly was a disaster, though by all accounts, Kelly was doing a great job. You need someone to take control, and Fehr's that guy.